The application of technology, particularly as it relates to AI and machine learning, has been advanced drastically under COVID, at least from our perspective. We were on the trajectory, I think, as many of our companies were, to introduce these technologies and leverage them into our business practices and standardize them. But COVID has allowed us to get a little bit further faster, which is frankly a good result. And kind of connecting my last comment, I think coming out of COVID, we'll find ways to actually be cheaper, more efficient, and more effective because of this. So from a purely AAR perspective, we've been able to introduce machine learning in some of our forecasting and planning models. And that's not only adding an element of automation, but also optimization into what we're doing. And we're seeing the positive effects of that. We need to roll that out more broadly, but initial indications are very positive. AR is also working with a few partners right now to introduce AI into our maintenance practices and highly reduce the turnaround time and increase the throughput, the flow days of aircraft and depot maintenance, while actually improving the product. There's some advanced technologies that we're working with the FAA on right now to bring those to bear. They're in testing phase, but I think, again, coming out of COVID, we need to find a way to be lean with our workforce and yet increase the throughput of depot maintenance. And then the third thing I'll say as it relates to agile logistics, I think it's been resonant within industry for a long time that we have to maintain a posture that enables us to continue operations, particularly on the government side, wherever those military members may be, and obviously that changes. So how do we do that in a way that is that's efficient and cost effective while still employing the redundancy that's needed for some of these supply chains? And we've seen the need for redundancy in a COVID environment. And from my perspective, we've operated an element of what we call support in depth. So we have layered support rings that go from as close to the point of use as possible all the way back to headquarters. And with redundancy comes cost, obviously, and we got to be very careful about that. So we've been putting a lot of thought and time and attention about thinking about how do we be redundant enough to ensure that there are assets that are needed for that end user, as close to that end user as possible, while at the same time not introducing a bunch of life cycle costs to these assets. And that's something that we've actually been using machine learning to help us with and enable our forecasting and planning models. And obviously, COVID has changed that landscape drastically, where we used to have a layered depth approach to material management, for example, that now gets affected because the geographical layout is no longer an option for us. So we have to triangulate differently and be very responsive. And so for us, I think it's the application of the technology paired with a layered approach that is redundant enough to ensure supportability without being too redundant and introducing unnecessary costs. And then my final comment here is just on supply chain optimization from my perspective. As some of our commodities continue to age, what we're finding is DMS is a real meaningful factor for us. It's not only introducing new costs to industry, but also to the end users, but it's actually presenting new challenges for us in actually maintaining capability and supportability of an asset. So AAR is really spending a lot of time thinking about and working with our supply base to revitalize supply chains that have died or are dying. And the two areas that we see to do that are partnering with our OEM counterparts to ensure that they will work with us in providing the right tech data and IP rights to enable us to produce those parts that may be out of production. And then the second is really introducing competition into that supply base to make sure that there are enough interested people that want to get involved, that we're not seeing costs that are so outrageously high that we actually can't afford to support them in the future. Happy